Okay. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us today at the City of Lacombe's Candidate Information Session. My name is Erica Thomas, and I'm President of Transitional Solutions. We're a public sector consulting firm that does a lot of work with municipalities across Alberta, both on the governance and on the administration side. And with me today, I have Doug Lagore, who will also be presenting alongside me. I'll be focusing mostly on the election itself and the rules and procedures around that. And then Doug is going to take you through a bit of a look at, so once you're a councillor, what does that mean? So let's get started. So a quick agenda, like I said, there's going to be two parts to our presentation this evening. The first part is really going to be about the election. It's going to be to give you all the information and all of the pieces that you need to know about running for municipal council. And then the second part will be, so now you're a councillor. What does that mean? What can you expect when you're a councillor for the City of Lacombe? So before we jump into the election, we always like to sort of talk about reasons to run and maybe reasons not to run. It is politics, and there are enough really good movies and shows out there to teach us about all the reasons not to run for politics, but we always like to start with this. So reasons to run, obviously to serve the community. You just have that passion for the community and you want to help better the community. It's a rewarding experience. I think most city councillors, town councillors, county councillors will tell you that it is a very rewarding experience. And to leave and create a positive impact in the community. Those are really big, good reasons to join council. Reasons not to run, self-interest. You can't get away from it. There's a lot of egos when you get into politics. So being self-interest is maybe not the best reason to run. Short-term priorities. Maybe, you're really just looking to build that resume. Again, probably not the best reason to run. It is a 4-year term, so short-term priorities should be considered carefully. Conflict of interest. I'm going to take you through what that looks like, but really truly consider whether there's a conflict of interest before you throw your name in the ring. And if you're driven by a single issue, and we see this a lot in municipal government, where somebody is just really ticked off about a potential road or a development or lack thereof, and that drives them to run for council. It's really not the best reason to run for council if you're driven by one single issue. So let's talk a little bit about conflicts of interest. A conflict of interest is a matter where you have maybe a similar business or professional interest that may create a reasonable bias. Pecuniary interest is one of those areas, and pecuniary interest is really around the financial component, and it's a personal financial interest where you or someone close to you will be financially impacted by your decisions. An example of this is you're a developer in the community and you are trying to change a bylaw to create a big development. If you do get onto council, by no means can you be involved in any of those conversations because you have a pecuniary interest, and that would be a contravention to the Municipal Government Act. So keep those things in mind. Okay, let's talk about the election. The nomination procedure. Obviously, if you're here, it's something that you've thought about. You have from January 1st until September 20th to file your nomination papers. You do require a minimum of 5 electors to sign your nomination papers. There is no deposit required to submit. Nomination forms are to be filed with legislative services, and they do prefer you do this by appointment and in person. They will not be accepting any electronic nomination forms. Candidate is responsible for ensuring that the nomination filed meets all the requirements of the Local Authority Elections Act, and I'll take you through some of those components as well. Within 24 hours of the close of nomination day at 12 noon on September 20th, a candidate can withdraw their nomination provided that there are enough candidates to run still within that role. So if you're the only person that has filed to run for mayor, you actually can't pull your nomination papers because there's nobody else to run. Same with as long as there's 6 candidates running for council, you can withdraw your nomination. If you do wish to withdraw your nomination, written notice has to be provided to the returning officer no later than 12 noon on September 21st, the day after the deadline for nomination. So give it lots of serious thought. Okay, so let's talk about candidate eligibility. Candidate has to be at least 18 years of age, a Canadian citizen, and a resident of Alberta, with the residence located in the City of Lacombe on October 18th, 2021. The candidate has to have lived in Lacombe for 6 consecutive months. So that puts you having to have lived in the City of Lacombe from March 15th, 2021, immediately before nomination day, September 20th. So that's that six consecutive months. And the potential candidate is not otherwise ineligible or disqualified. And I'm going to take you through areas that might disqualify you or make you ineligible to run. So ineligibility. So Section 22 and 23 of the Local Authorities Election Act provides an overview of instances where a person is ineligible to be nominated. Those include, you cannot be an auditor for the city. You cannot owe property taxes more than $50 or have more than $50 in arrears. That doesn't include current taxes or previous taxes addressed in a consolidation agreement. Excuse me, the person owes the city any amount exceeding $500 for more than 90 days. So basically your accounts have to be all in good order with the city. And the person has, within the previous 10 years, been convicted of an offense under the Local Authority Election Act, the Election Act, the Election Finances and Contributions Disclosure Act, or the Canada Elections Act. So you can't have been committed in any of those areas. Excuse me. So this doesn't entail all the instances of ineligibility, so it's really important that you take a close look at Section 22 and 23 of the Local Authority Elections Act to just make sure that you don't fall with any of those categories. So there are some key dates here for the City of Lacombe around the election. Nomination day, that's a big one. Put it in your calendar if you are considering, because September 20th by 12 noon, you have to have your nomination papers filed. Then on October 1st, there's an advance poll, and that will be at the Lacombe Memorial Centre. There will be another advance poll on October 12th. October 18th is election day, and then there's a few other area or timelines on October 18th where there will be votes for continuing care and lodge residents. So all this information around the dates can be found on the City of Lacombe's website as well. So campaign finance, how are you going to pay for your campaign? An election expense includes an expense incurred for or a non-monetary contribution in relation to advertising and promotional materials, distribution, broadcast, or publication of advertising or promotional material in any media, payment of remuneration and expenses to or on behalf of a person for the person's services as chief financial officer or in any other capacity, securing a meeting space, and the conduct of election surveys or other surveys for research towards your campaign. So it is the responsibility of the candidate to ensure that money in the campaign account is only used for the payment of campaign expenses. And this is all again defined in the Local Authorities Election Act in section 147.1. Further rules can be found actually on the City of Lacombe's website. They have a really great site aimed just towards the election. So if you're curious or you need more information, check out that website because there's a lot of links both for information around the City of Lacombe, Local Authorities Election Act, Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, and a number of other links. So election by acclamation, we talked a little bit about that withdrawal period. Well, if you are the only person running and nobody else files nomination by September 20th, then you are acclaimed as into that position. The returning officer will declare the candidates to be acclaimed to the offices which they're nominated. It's pretty simple. There's not too many rules around that. So the Local Authorities Election Act, I think this is something that if you are considering running for office, that you become familiar with. Again, the link is on the City of Lacombe's website. It is the main legislation that guides the conduct of a municipal election or by-election. If you need further clarification on definitions, procedures, processes, it's really important to just consult the legislation. I think you should print yourself a copy and have it on hand if you are planning on running. You can also get a printed copy if you want, and there is a phone number there. I believe that you can also order it directly online through the Queen's printer. So campaigning, what does that look like? Well, we've all had somebody knocking on our door telling us why we should vote for them, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal. So there's definitely a tactic that you can use. Other areas or strategies would be signage, brochures or posters, participating in local candidate debates or forums. You can set yourself up a social media page or a website, and you can host meet and greet events. So I would suggest you familiarize yourself as well, particularly when it comes to signage, with the City of Lacombe's Land Use Bylaw 400, section 7.9.6. Then that will give you some information around where you can put election signs, timelines of election signs. You can also refer to a candidate's guide running for municipal office in Alberta, and that will also give you some information around signage, particularly when it comes to election day. So let's talk about election day. Candidates, official agents, or campaign volunteers cannot canvass or solicit votes in a voting station or on the property used for a voting station on an advance vote or election day. Now we talk about signage. Also posters, pins, signage, any campaign materials cannot be displayed or distributed inside or on the outside of a building used as a voting station. So you cannot put your sign on the lawn of the voting station, unfortunately. You need to get to know the neighbors leading up to the voting station. So after the votes, so following the close of voting stations at 8 p.m., unofficial election results will be available quite quickly, actually. Unofficial results email from the returning officer to all candidates. Then there will be a subsequent press release from City Communications. And there will be posts at City Hall in the lobby and on the city website. All of these sources will be updated throughout the evening as results are received from the voting stations. And as it's difficult to determine when the unofficial results will be available, we do appreciate your patience in waiting for those results, understanding that everyone's working hard in the background to get those results in and in a timely and accurate manner. If there's a need for a recount, recounts need to be called immediately after the election day and before the posting of the official election results. So recounts must be completed before noon on Friday, October 22nd. Again, there's more information on the City of Lacombe's website if you're curious about that process. So I'm going to pass it on to Doug Lagore now, who's going to explain to you what it's like to be a councillor.
Thanks, Erica. So now you're elected. The first thing you should be doing is taking your signs down. And in fact, if you want to be a good candidate, take them down the following day. Nothing frustrates residents more than driving around the community and seeing campaign signs up for a week or two after election. Hey, Eric,
I think you're hitting the wrong button. Hit this one instead.
Oh, sorry. So the purpose of the municipality, it's section 3 of the MGA. The MGA is a fairly thick document. It's about like that. You're not expected to know all of it. You've got the resources at the town office. If you need help in getting to understand what the MGA is about a particular item, don't hesitate to talk to staff. They're fairly good experts at that, and they'll give you as close to a legal opinion as you can get on. So the purpose of the municipality is to provide good government. You're to foster the well-being of the environment. You're to provide services, facilities, or other things that, in the opinion of council, are necessary or desirable for all or part of the municipality. That's pretty broad-reaching. Municipality can really do almost anything they want if it's in the best interest of the community. And residents will tell you if it's not in the best interest of the community. You usually hear fairly quickly. You want to develop and maintain safe and viable communities, and you're to work collaboratively with neighboring municipalities to plan, delivery, and fund intermunicipal services. The province recently embarked upon what's called intercollaboration frameworks, and this was legislated where neighboring municipalities had to reach agreements on how they're going to provide regional services. It's fairly successful, except when it comes down to recreation services, and there's many communities across Alberta that are still arguing that. Fortunately for City of Lacombe and Lacombe County, you've reached that agreement, and it's probably one of the first in Alberta to do that. Municipal government, powers and functions of council administration are laid out in the MGA. As the governing body for the municipality, council can set bylaws for the municipality. You set policy for the municipality and for administration, and you set the budgets identifying the funding priorities. If local tools conflict with higher levels of government, such as like policies or bylaw, then the provincial or federal will prevail. The local will become null and void. Governance administration. Council is a group of people working together with another group of people, the administration, to accomplish the vision and missions of an organization. Effective councils operate with a common perspective on roles, relationships, expectations among the participants in the system. Over the last 3 years, I don't know how many conflict of interest investigations there's been across the province. They do nothing but tear councils apart. Get to know your conflict of interest policy, work together. If you try and work against the system, you end up with complaints, and I can tell you, nobody wins in those. You can watch them, any number of them across the province are easy to find online, on websites. They don't want to come out well. In fact, there's one rural county where it's ended up in a lawsuit amongst council themselves and the municipality. Work together for the betterment of the community. That's what you're here for. Put your personalities, conflicts, etc. aside. That doesn't mean you can't share opinions, have good debates, but do it for the right reason. High performance councils act like a team. You've got a common goal and an mandate. And what you do, try and achieve that. And when council makes this decision, it doesn't matter which side of the issue you voted on, support it. Do not work against what your council is trying to do, because that'll rip a council apart. And you will not last long as elected official. You never get good press on that, I can tell you. They channel conflict, they value the diverse perspectives of the team, and they share a common goal. Why does it matter? If you can operate as a team with care for each other's perspective, then you can have rich, meaningful, productive debate. Effective councils work very intentionally to create the conditions necessary for productive discussion. In other words, everybody works to try and have a good discussion. We must be accountable for how we interact with each other so that we can achieve progress. Therefore, listen generously, participate actively, disagree agreeably, leave the personality out of the room, trust the process, and remember there are at least 2 sides to every story, if not 3. Leadership. Council's role is to set the strategic direction of the organization, the purpose, the mission, and put in place a leadership model to accomplish that direction. Stewardship, you have the responsibility to direct resources belonging to others. In other words, it's public money. You're directing it to to others, which is risk management, allocation of duties, roles, responsibility, and delegation of authority. Monitoring, you receive and you review measures of performance and hold the organization accountable for outcomes, achieving the purpose and creating the value. And how you do that is your CAO is your only employee. That's who you hold accountable. Reporting, you're accountable to the principals on the results of using the resources in a transparent manner. The CAO, as I said, is the only employee who reports to council, he or she. Council needs to establish performance expectations for the Chief Administrative Officer and review at least annually. And I like to see you review them more than annually. I think you should do it a couple times a year. Sit down with the CAO and talk about it. Council and the Chief Administrative Officer need to have a trusting relationship. Trust each other, you're both working for the common goal. Establish your joint values and have a shared understanding of those values. So as soon as you're elected, you should be looking at your strategic plan. That sets out what you want to do. And then your CAO understands where you want to go. And then make sure you have a clear understanding of those values of how you're going to get there. The CAO's responsibilities, he is the administrative head of the municipality. He ensures that policies and programs of the municipality are implemented. In other words, a council member should not be phoning up and say, why isn't my street snow removed? Call the director of public works or one of your grader operators and say, my street should be clean. That's not how it works. Talk to the CAO. There's probably a policy in place that sets priorities for cleaning the streets in the community. That's what you need to follow. Your CAO should advise and inform council on the operation and affairs of the municipalities. They perform the duties and functions and exercise the powers assigned by council. That's usually through a bylaw, and it may be by policy or it may be just through the job description. Council and staff relationships. The CAO should provide leadership to the senior management team to build political acumen and define the role of council versus management. There's a really good toolkit on the CAMRA website, which is the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators, and it is a really good resource. It's a good resource for elected officials too. Be cautious about overcommitting both your own and staff time and ability to respond to requests. Always be able to deliver, and if not, be upfront and transparent and open about why you can't deliver. In other words, if it's going to take an extra week, then explain why it's going to take an extra week. Manage council requests through motions to ensure it is council as a whole making the request administration. And you should always fall back on the strategic plan as a roadmap for your municipality's efforts. If you're embarking upon something, it should fit within your strategic plan. If it doesn't, you should be wondering why you're doing it. And there may be a good reason, but make sure you have that discussion and see why it should be there. The other thing, during a council meeting, if one council says, I think we should have the CAO look into something, that is not direction. And don't expect your CAO to respond to that. If you really want your CAO to bring back information on that to council, pass a motion, that'll give them the direction, and then you know everybody's on board for it. Always lead by example. Knowing your role. So the council's role is policy, legislative focus. You set and approve policy, provide direction to the CAO. You establish a municipal strategic plan, and that should be one of your first priorities. You approve the budget, and you provide political direction, and you represent your constituents. The CAO's role is direction and leadership focus. He reports to and takes direction from council. He establishes a tactical plan to achieve the strategic plan. In other words, he puts a plan in place for him and the management team. It's how is it going to fulfill that strategic plan that council's put in place. Advises and makes recommendations to council. Liaison between council and staff. Now, normally, all your conversations should go through the CAO, but if you have a good working, trusting relationship with the CAO, they probably don't mind if you talk directly to a director. However, that director is going to be talking to the CAO very quickly thereafter and say, Council so-and-so is just in here asking for this. They direct the implementation of council policies. They have the responsibility for hiring and developing a team of competent staff. Senior administration, and this is usually the 3 or 4 or 5 direct reports to the city manager. Operation and implementation focused. They report to and take direction from the CAO. They research policy and programs. They advise and make recommendations based on professional expertise. They implement the decisions of council and they fulfill all the statutory duties. Council strategic plan. This is one of the first duties of a new council, is to set the path forward through their council strategic plan. It's your vision of where you want to see the municipality go over the next 4 years. Council's strategic plan sets a direction for administration and the vision for the community for their term in office and beyond. It outlines the important priorities and outcomes of a community over time. While municipalities may have multiple strategies, this document refers to a single overarching municipal strategy that should be developed. The strategy should show how a municipality can get to where they want to be. For example, their vision and how they will focus their resources. Council meeting. Minimum expectations based on legislation is that you must attend council and committee meetings. Lacombe council meetings are the 2nd and 4th Monday of every month, and they start at 5 p.m. In camera, council and committees may close all or part of their meetings to the public if a matter to be discussed is within one of the exemptions to disclosure in Division 2 of Part 1 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, commonly referred to as FOIA. And typically it's land, legal, and labor. There is other circumstances, but those are really what covers in camera. Budget. Council is responsible to set the annual budget for the municipality, and you'll probably be doing that right after being elected, like in November. It has to be done by the end of the year. Committee councils are expected to sit on one or more of the committees of council, which could include City of Lacombe committees or intermunicipal committees. And if you look at the city's website, you'll find all the committees there. There is quite a list. The commitment. This is what you're committing to. A substantial portion of every week will be devoted to council activities. Just because you only have 2 council meetings a month, it's much more than that. You have external, internal committees, you have board appointments, there's public appearances, there's guest requests, there's meeting preparation and reading agendas. You got to follow up with staff and public, and you'll have discussions with other local elected officials, not just within your community, within the county, city of Red Deer, across the province.
Doug, in your experience, what's the largest agenda package you've ever seen?
I've seen agenda packages 400 pages. You get that less than a week ahead of the next meeting, and you've got to read it.
So is that and you would relevant in relation? That's a big number, 400 pages. So is that in relation, perhaps, with the size of the community, where Lacombe would have 400 pages, or Clyde would not, or Lacombe would have 400 pages, Lacombe would not, or the size of the community?
No, that's a very good, fair question. It can relate to the size of the community. Typically, the smaller communities do not have packages like that. But I don't know if Lacombe has had any 400 pages ones here, but I'm sure they have. You get dealing with some pretty big policies. Municipal development plan is a very big policy. Now, that whole bylaw may be contained within that package. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have to read and know every part of it. If you look at the report that's contained with it, it'll really talk about what's changing, and that's the part that you got to read in that context. So you'll get to know what it is, but don't think you can pick your council package up the day before or the day of the meeting and be prepared for that meeting. It takes work. An effective change can take some time. Things don't happen quickly. You need to understand and appreciate that. You may be implementing changes that have already been started by a previous council. Conversely, there may also be urgent items that require swift action. And a good example of that is what happened with COVID. Municipalities had to adjust very quickly. They had to shut down recreation facilities. What do you do with staffing? What do you do with keeping that HVAC systems, et cetera, going in buildings? There was all kinds of things that municipalities had to deal with. Bang, right now. You have to make a decision. Some can be overwhelming due to demands, pressures, or sensitivity. You could have a land matter that comes up right away that you have to deal with quickly. And there is provision in the Act to call special council meetings when you have to deal with some of those quickly, and they do happen. I can tell you, it's hard to take a holiday when you become an elected official. And I don't mean like going on a vacation, but it's hard to say, let's take the weekend off, because you never know when your phone's going to be ringing about something. It's tough on small business owners, and it's tough on people with young families. Complexity of the role. Corporate responsibilities cover a diversity of issues: public utilities, construction, policing, public safety, fixing potholes, catching dogs, water supply, community health, to name a few. And you'll get lots of complaints. Intergovernmental relations with local, regional, First Nations, provincial, and even federal governments. Everything is heavily regulated by provincial statutes, regulations, local bylaws, policies, and even federal and common law. But you are the level of government that's closest to the people, and you'll have the most impact and the most interaction. In the midst of all this, council is expected to provide leadership and governance. Leadership in terms of the way forward, and governance in terms of making the best decision for the community for today and into the future. And you always have to be looking to the future. Impact in your personal life, you become a public official immediately. The press and public are always watching you and what you do 24/7. Nothing is ever off the record, and you can never turn off being a council. Expect to be spoken to and even confronted at the grocery stores, movies, while taking a relaxing dinner out. I've got 40 years experience as a CEO, and I can tell you there's never been a place that I've been able to go to where I have not been confronted or asked on a particular issue. It happens all the time. Train your family how to respond to irate phone calls. And don't be afraid to say, it's dinner time, give me your number, I'll call you back. Because otherwise you can be interrupted all the time during dinner. It's tough when you have young families.
Is there a limitation to when somebody is absolutely a pest? Can you say enough and go to the police or some other authority if somebody absolutely is a pest? I mean, I've seen it happen.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And you can block them on your phone too.
Yeah.
And the first approach is you should say, look, I don't want to talk to you anymore about this. And just tell them, don't call me anymore. And then if they continue, then you take it the next step. And make sure you keep the CAO and the mayor informed. Questions? Hopefully we didn't scare you off. Yes.
I'm, well, not concerned, but really curious on account of COVID with regard to, well, that's forum that is usually held a week or two, if you will, prior to election day on the voting. can that or will that even happen? Or maybe better said, would it happen if the COVID was as up and rampant as it was like 6 months ago? Like maybe things are going to be tempered down, but is there a possibility that there will be absolutely no forum in here? Because I think that's the best election, campaigning of all, the forum here. Then people get to know who we are, if you can handle it.
Forums can take a different format. It could be virtual, but I would think if we see COVID continue like it is into September, I think you can be confident that there will be a forum.
It is anticipated this year that if we're staying in stage 3 where we are, we will have the forum. I agree with you. It is probably one of the most attended by the public to get to know the candidates. And it's that one time that everybody can see everyone's point of views and their opinions and how they would like to see the city running in the future. If it does end up where COVID does play a role again, we will probably try to have a virtual presence more so. We'll limit the number of people who have attendance, but we'll probably do a live through Facebook Live or something like that, ability to get on.
Well, I dare say it's not. I didn't come here to offer suggestions nor opinions, but if you will listen to me just for briefly, my opinion is that forum is extremely important to the extent, and I've thought this for years, not just now, 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, or whatever it is, and then 4 years prior to that, and what have you. So going back in time, every time there's a forum, which I have attended, I'm wishing that there were another one upcoming, or I wish that there was one and then another one. There should be 2. That's just my opinion. You might disagree, but like, I seriously think that something this important deserves more than one forum. Notwithstanding COVID, of course.
Who hosts the forum? Is the
The
chamber?
Chamber of Commerce.
So then I would talk to the chamber. If you feel that strongly about talking to the chamber, and encourage them to hold 2 forums.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to stop them from doing that.
Or if there's another group that is interested in hosting a forum, sometimes, I know with federal, like through the school system and stuff like that, they will host a forum as well, so.
Well, and then for no other reason, somebody really wants to go to the forum, but they absolutely cannot. And that said, I'm disappointed with the turnout tonight. If you had another one, maybe there would be a better turnout. Maybe just it happened to be a bad day. I don't know. I'm surprised there's only 3 people here. I really am. Really surprised.
The one thing is we are recording this session, so we're going to be posting it on social media channels, and we'll have more people to be able to view it at least.
Now, if you got questions, anytime between now and polling, reach out to the city. They're more than willing to help, and they have a total neutral position. I can guarantee you of that.
I hope you don't mind me saying so, sir, but I remember and I admire you for what you did, because you, if I'm not mistaken, from this to the town, you were the town manager here. Am I correct?
That's correct.
When the offices were right in the corner of the parking lot.
That's correct.
I remember that. Early 80s?
Mid-80s.
Yeah. I remember.
Probably as well as I do. Diane, you were gonna say something.
I was just gonna say, at the front table there's a card for Matt Dowdy, who is our CAO, and he is willing to book an hour of time for anybody who is wanting to be a candidate. Just to get some information and to understand some of the ongoings of the city, some of the hot button topics right now. You're more than willing to spend some time with him to just get some insight into the city, and that may help you with your campaign.
Would he volunteer hot button topics, or would I, if I booked an appointment with Matthew Dowdy, would he bring up some of the hot button topics, or would I have to be on top of things to the extent that, well, this and this are going on, or can you tell me more? Like, will he, or?
Yeah, we'll give you some.
I'm sure he will.
Absolutely.
If it's, yeah,
Transparent.
it's hot button, there's probably some heat already there, so. Yeah, it wouldn't do him any good to hide it.
Yeah.
That's right. And a hot button to you may be completely different than a hot button over here.
Yeah.
But no, you'll find your administration is very, very open. You know, and they have to be. Your councils are changing all the time. You have to be able to work with these people. You got to build that relationship and build that trust.
I have a question for you. Who hires the CAO?
Council.
Council.
As a group.
And is he hired every 4 years, or is it?
I'm not sure what the contract is, but if he has a contract with a term in it, then it'll be up to council to decide whether you want to extend that contract or you want the hard ways to go on to hire a new one.
The current CAO, I know, correct me if I'm wrong, was hired by the current council. He was kind of in line, that's just an opinion. He was kind of in line because he was in the administration anyway. A guy came, was only here for, what, 2-3 months. Was a wonderful guy, left for whatever his reasons were, and then this guy came in, and in my opinion, this guy is a good CAO too. He's fairly recent, like I'm gonna say he's into his 3rd year, or early into his 4th year, something like that.
But Matt has been with the town for
Since
quite
2006.
2006.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's been here 15 years.
Yeah, so he was here for 10 or 12 years before he became
Right.
CAO.
And the conflict of interest piece, I can imagine is nuanced and can sometimes be perhaps hard to. Yeah, I'd love to talk more about that because it still seems a little bit confusing about sometimes like where the lines are. For example, like we work for a local construction company. So is it like if you're even on staff? Because I presume city councillors, city councillors a part-time job, although it takes up workload. So it's like how do you manage some of those sorts of things, and then also around the more personal side of things like church membership or things like that. How does that relate to
Churches typically will rarely cause you a concert. The only time it may is if your church, say, is wanting to build a new one and you come to deal with the land.
Right.
And you've got neighbors say, that we don't want that church here because of all the traffic it's going to bring us in. There's no direct pecuniary interest because you're not gaining anything financially, but you probably have a bias. The best advice you can get is stand aside, let the balance of council deal with that issue. And you live with that, their decision making. Now, Lacombe in the past did have a person as councillor that owned a construction company. Let's just say it was a road being built, and you build roads, you would not want to be part of that discussion. Now, you may be part of the discussion of the budget, where you approve the budget, where you've got $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million for a road improvement. But when it comes to actually dealing with the contract for that road improvement, stay out of it.
Is this the place where the word recuse is used?
Yeah.
You recuse yourself from the vote?
Correct. And
Well,
the
not
discussion.
just the vote, the
The
discussion too.
The discussion too?
Yes,
Okay.
whole
Leave the
discussion.
room, do not even stay in the room.
Yeah.
Quite often, and this doesn't happen typically in communities this size, but you'll get to see a person will leave the council table, you'll stand back over in the corner. You better vote the way I told you to, or we'll deal with this later. That's kind of the impression you get. Leave the room.
Yeah.
And that's all like internally or personally monitored, like, I guess, because sometimes like, you work for a road construction company, but the discussion is around road clearance or something like that. Like it's related, but not directly.
More pecuniary, like if there's a financial interest, excuse yourself from the conversation. Think about it this way. Would you want the front page of the newspaper to have a picture of you on the council discussion in that topic, right?
Yeah.
So there's common sense, but then there's also if it is a pecuniary interest and you do participate in the discussion and the vote, now you're in direct contravention with the Municipal Government Act, and that's when people can raise the flag, and that's when folks like us come in to do a council code of conduct investigation.
It really is self-governed though.
It is.
It's your own conscience, it's your own, like this.
But I can tell you, members of the public are watching as well.
The competing construction company is watching.
Is there a way you can find who's the current nominees? Are they listed somewhere or?
I can honestly tell you there are no nominees at this point. Not until September 20th, when nominations close, we'll be posting all the nominations.
Okay, so it's not public until it's closed.
There is a form that you can sign if you would like it to be public, but after the point of closing, then it becomes public.
Typically, they wait until they close and then all the names are made public. But you may see signs start showing up before that.
Right.
And one thing, if you do run, pay attention to the election sign bylaw, because you can tick off a lot of people by putting your signs up in the wrong places.
I was just going to say that this is the first year that nomination period is going from January 1st to September 20th. So it's unusual. Normally, it's unusual to post anything prior. Normally, we only have like a 4-hour window to get nominations on the day of nomination day. You can pick up packages, but there's only about a 4-hour window to put in your nominations. This year, nominations can go in at any time. And so I know that like Stony Plain and St. Albert, they already have a page on their websites where they do have people who are running, and it's already listed on their websites. So it's an unusual change for having such a long nomination period.
I'm trying to recall the old dates that says January 1st, 2021 to September 20th, nominations closed. And then officially the campaign begins. So in the old days, prior, you couldn't have a sign up until nomination day, is that correct?
I can't say about prior, do you know?
Prior actually it was 1 day.
It was 1 day.
Yeah,
that
nomination
started-
day was September 20th, that's when you file.
Could you start putting signs up prior to nomination day in the last one?
Right, because
But now you can.
Yeah, now you
Now
can,
you can
but
put signs
you
up.
didn't used to be able to. And there used to be a lineup when the door opened, 10 o'clock, say on September 20th, there was a rush of people coming in there. And some people would hold back their papers to see who all was going to put their
Very true.
papers forward. No, they didn't show their cards until the last minute.
So roughly what were the dates before this year?
Nomination date, like you could pick up your package, your nomination papers, I think up to 4 weeks prior to nomination day, but you only had that day to put in your papers as a candidate.
I think it's the third Monday in,
Yeah, it's the third Monday of September.
and it's always been the third Monday in September.
And then 6 weeks later is the election after that.
Now, to say campaigning only starts then? No. Campaigning has already started.
Well, for some people, campaigning has been going on all their life.
That's exactly right. That's
In my
exactly.
case, I'm from the oldest family in the entire district, so my name is well known, maybe I'm not well known, my last name certainly is. So people will say, well, that family's been here for years, they might know a little something about Lacombe. I might be the worst guy ever, but that family name has been here forever.
Yeah.
But just by that alone, that's kind of campaigning, if I do become a candidate.
Go to the A&W at 10 a.m. and
That's
probably
right.
you'll see who you'll know who's putting nomination papers in pretty quick.
That's exactly right.
There's one group meeting at A&W, another group at Tim Hortons.
Another one that's Donald.
Exactly.
That actually, I know everybody, I used to know everybody in the town. It was small, now I don't know anybody because it's grown so fast and so big. But there's a clique at Tim Hortons that know everybody at McDonald's, and there's another clique at McDonald's that know everybody there, and there's another clique at A&W guaranteed, and then there's another one that will come over in, so little coffee cliques, another one that meets in here. See the same faces, sitting in the same chair every day, and whatever the next is.
That's exactly right. And the other thing too, you'll hear council say, well, the silly season has started. During the last year of a term of council, in some communities, I'm not saying this happening here, people start to position themselves on different issues and different topics because they want to run for office again. They're trying to get their name out there, get it in the paper, get people talking about them. Councillor so-and-so is pushing this forward. And that's campaigning, is what it is. It's called the
Red zone, the red zone where they won't make a decision on certain things.
That's right. Oh, no, we can't talk about that. Should have actually get reelected. Push that off to the next council.
I don't want to get too technical about the home, but because you know about the home and path and you are on administration, I was telling the relatives of my common law wife that are here from Ontario, I hope I'm right. If I'm not, I'm going to go and give them the correct information. There used to be Lacombe, and then you drove out of Lacombe, you drove into Rosedale Valley, and you left Rosedale Valley and you went to College Heights, Alberta. Now, there are still 3 separate communities to this day. Rosedale Valley is not part of the city yet.
That's correct.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Nor is College Heights, Alberta. But the city has grown right to it, but pardon?
That is part of the city now. We have annexed it, yes.
Vermont University is in the city?
Yes.
So, okay, but Rosedale Valley is not.
That's correct.
That's what I thought.
How did that?
Gotta go back and see the in-laws.
Yeah.
So if you live in Rosedale Valley, you can't run for council in Lacombe,
That's correct. Nor can you vote.
nor can you vote. Yeah.
If we run into county.
That would be a county.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in Division 4. It would have to be Division 4.
I honestly don't know.
Well, I know the division.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the division number, right? Sorry. Any other questions?
I'm sure I do.
If you do, don't hesitate to reach out to Matt.
Tons of information. There's, I would assume the local authorities election act page probably even has a FAQ. Take a look at that.
The candidate's guide is actually a wonderful,
Yes, thank you.
wonderful resource as well. And again, the city's website, we have tons of information on there.
And the local authorities election act is not a big act. You can look at it online. Excuse me, you're here.
Yeah,
Or the idea that the Queen will print it.
the Queen does print it for you.
Personal
It's
printer.
not cheap, but you can, she will print it for you.
You should be able to print it.
How expensive would it be to go up there? How expensive would it be? Like $300 or $200 or
To
$1,000?
get a printed copy. You could order it online for probably just
$30.
$40.
Yeah, I was gonna say $20 or $30. Mind you, I think
Yeah, there's the local authorities election act.
It is in the PDF version. You can actually go to the library here, download it and print it at the library too. You don't have to go outside. It's, you just have to Google, local authority election act Alberta, and it pops up right away.
I think you can order it and they'll deliver it to you as well.
Yeah.
So, the strategic plan, that's a question. Like each individual person running is going to have their own vision and beliefs and values and hopes and dreams or whatever in the future. I guess that city council strategic plan is fundamentally where everybody gets together for a session and they're like, here's my vision.
You as a group will discuss your vision and typically it's facilitated and the facilitator will take you through an exercise often started by a survey beforehand. So the facilitator gets to know what your vision is and your goals are and helps to match them. You'd be surprised, typically there isn't a huge difference in the goals. If you look at the strategic plans of the communities across Alberta, they don't differ much. You want to protect the environment, You want to have a safe, happy community. You want to make sure your infrastructure is in good shape. You want to make sure recreation, parks, and culture, like there's really
Big stuff.
5 key areas that every municipality focuses on. It's really around the key priorities under that. Okay, so if you want to have a safe, livable community, well, what does that look like? What are the priorities? Is it, well, we want to expand our trail system, or we want to do this? That's where you really get into the guts. So that's really about.
So that strategic plan, yeah, it's more of an abstract expression, and that's where you can find cohesive alliance.
Absolutely.
And typically what you'll find is when you get the 7 people in the room talking about these issues, your key priorities that Eric mentioned, you'll find there's a lot of commonality there.
Yeah.
They'll boil to the top very quickly. Gee, that's something I want to do too. And you find all of a sudden you've got everybody agreed, that's something we should be doing as a council.
It's the finite expression of that you'll probably have most.
That's right.
Is there any way of officially or technically finding out, or would it be against the law? Really strong words, but like not acceptable to, other than going to each person and relying on their truth or untruth. Right now, there's a mayor and there's 6 councillors. And I know each one of them well enough to say hello to. But can I go, sort of like behind your back, I don't do things like that, but go and find out how many of them intend to run again, or how many of them intend to step down, et cetera? Or is that privileged information that nobody can release? That's the point, that was the point, wasn't it?
No, you can try and find that out. They may not tell you. They may be holding their cards close to their chest until nomination day, but they may tell you. Mayor can say, yes, I'm going to run again.
Typically, the media is all over that.
I don't have anything against the current councillors at all, but I like to think that I can contribute. My chances would be better of getting elected, maybe if one of them was planned on stepping down, or maybe I might beat them fair and square in a runoff, like who knows? Same as these gentlemen here.
That's right.
But it would be nice to know if some of these guys are men and women that are on council are gonna run for another term, or if they said, well, we're gonna take a break. Like, I'd like to know. I have no clue.
Typically, the local newspaper is on top of that. I don't know how yours stand, but typically the local newspapers are going to be calling them and asking for a statement. And I haven't seen too many that don't announce their intention before nomination day. Would you agree?
Yeah.
It doesn't do them any favors to not announce.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
You'll see, they'll start to declare pretty quickly. Do you take August off for meetings?
No, we don't. We've taken the last meeting in July off. So we've already had our July meeting on the 12th. Normally we would have had our second one next coming Monday, but we're not doing that. We do have a meeting August 9th, regular council meeting, and then we have a committee meeting on August 16th at this point. Quite often council has added, like last year, we did a different process with our budget. We had a pre-budget meeting, so that added an extra committee meeting within the month of August, but we did have a couple of special meetings too, so it was a very busy August last year.
How much has COVID affected public participation, public attendance in the gallery?
Well, there was no public attendance, but we did stream every council meeting so that anyone can go back and even watch all the council meetings and such.
And it's still like that?
No, you are allowed to attend now. It is open now, yes. And because we're doing renovations with our council chambers, our council chambers are located here in LNC, and it's upstairs in the Kingston room currently until the end of, until the new council comes in. So the council chambers will be located here in the LNC.
You got a question?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of stories. And so if is there more to share this evening, or is, okay. I'd love to hear some stories from you, and if you guys have been, like, for instance, like when did it start? Like, where was that first percolation of the idea to run for your role of government? How did that happen? What was the experience there?
Quite often, you're approached by someone in the community, say, look, we need someone on council, we think you've got the right areas of expertise. Or you may have a young family that's very hockey oriented or ball oriented or something. And the ball or hockey community will reach out, look, we think you can represent our interests at the table. We'll support you if you want to run for office. And
Have you been a counselor anywhere? You did administration. Have you ever actually been elected counselor?
I actually have been, yes.
And I presume you don't want to go too much into that?
Pardon?
Would you be willing to reveal that experience?
Why I did it, or?
Yeah, why, how, I presume obviously that must be a big factor, this movie speaking here.
Well, I was approached by a group of businessmen that wanted me to run for council because they thought I could bring something to the table. And I had been on council about 2 years. And then I was approached to become the CAO when the CAO left. And
The rest is
I was
history.
very strongly pressured to take that role, and I ended up doing the best decision of my life.
How many communities have you been a CAO in, Doug?
7 officially, but since that time, I'm currently an acting CAO in the community. I've done extensive other types of roles, but all governance related. For instance, I was appointed by the minister as the interim CEO for the Alberta Motor Vehicle and Industry Council. I went in there for 3 months to clean it up. Ended up being there for 18 months. They didn't want to hire anyone right away. But I've worked with Eric now for 6 years, and we work all over the province. We actually work across Canada. There's other places in Canada where we're doing work. And with COVID, we do a lot of it virtual.
The CAMA political acumen toolkit, we wrote that for CAMA. We did. Yeah. So we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to councils, for sure. And I can tell you that it's in your best interest, as Doug said in his presentation, to disagree agreeably, to go in, go in with the right attitude, because we've seen where that's gone poorly. We've been the official administrators in a municipality where the Minister of Municipal Affairs has said, sorry, council, you don't get to make motions without these folks saying yay or nay to those. And that will happen. So Municipal Government Act is there to ensure, partly obviously, to ensure that council does what they're supposed to do and stays in line with their rules.
And when you get a council that's dysfunctional and you're appointed as official administrator, they're really sterilized. They can't do anything without the official administrator's approval.
We've done council code of conduct reviews, investigations, and having said that, there are a lot of really great, highly functioning councils across this province that we've also worked with. And when you see a highly functioning council, you can see it as soon as you drive into the community. When you see a dysfunctional council, you can see it as soon as you drive into the community. It doesn't take long for you to realize.
What would be the biggest visual indicator of that, of a good functioning council or not, that you're seeing you drive?
Dysfunctional?
Yeah, what would be an example of a dysfunctional thing that I can see when I drive into the community?
Look at the local newspaper.
Okay.
Even just like the trash along the road, how well the community is upkept, because a dysfunctional council typically will result in unhappy staff that are the ones looking after your community, the ones watering the flowers and mowing the lawns. You could just, I don't know what, and maybe it's because we're used to working with those communities that we can recognize it right away, but it flows. Unfortunately, council is the governing body of the municipality. And so dysfunctional, poor culture on council flows down.
I know one council in Alberta where they went in camera to talk about something and a fist fight broke out.
Oh.
And then they come back out in the open council session. One guy's shirt has got blood all over it. Now, how does that look to the public? And the media is sitting there writing the front page of the paper.
So being that the two of you three of them put on a really good presentation here tonight, but not a very, very big turnout. Is it? Will you look at doing this again in the hopes of getting more? Like, I'm disappointed because I love this community. I'm disappointed that there's only three of us that care enough to come to this tonight. Like, I'm shocked actually, I really am.
Like I said, we're recording this, so the video and the presentation and stuff will be recorded and put on social media channels, on our website, so people will be able to watch this and see it at their own leisure.
But you won't do this again.
But it's not that, it's not, so.
I mean, we're all kind of coming out of that COVID bubble too, so
You betcha that's a
the
big part.
waking up experience is slow for society, so
Yeah.
it's understandable.
And the other thing I'll say, kudos to City of Lacombe for doing this. A few years ago, you would never have heard of this. It was totally unheard of.
Well, I was impressed when I saw the, posters on the bulletin board. So we said, now that's a good idea. So you had the City of Lacombe, the town of Lacombe has not done this previously.
Or this is the first year.
There's not many communities that do this.
Three is here. But
I'm happy with the turnout.
three is better than two.
That's
Two
exactly.
is better than
Or
one.
just that camera, or just the camera in front of us.
Yeah, that would have been awkward.
Has it ever happened where there is no person in the community that decides to run?
Yes.
Even for that.
Yeah.
And quite often that happens in villages where they extend the nomination period. They try desperately to get someone to put their name forward. And I've also seen instances where someone's gone to withdraw. And as Erica talked about, you've just got the right number of people, you can't withdraw. So what they do is they resign right afterwards, which results in a by-election, cost to the municipality.
In my time here, there's been 1 year that we got every councillor and mayor in as active. They were all appointed. So we only had 6 councillors and the mayor was the only one running. So we didn't actually have to go forward with the election. It was all applied.
Recently.
This would have been probably back in 98 or 2001, one of the two. Yeah.
Well, first of all, 98 to 2001, that's only 3. It was 4. It
Was 3.
was 3, now it's 4, pardon me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's a more typical expectation then?
I think we've had as many as 12 councillors, nominees for council, and we've had up to three nominees for mayor at times. But then we've done where there's only 2. The last couple of elections have only been two running for mayor, and usually about 9 to 12 councillors running.
The last election, Mayor Creasy ran against former councillor Peter Bowden.
That's right.
The election before that, Mayor Creasy ran against the mayor at the time, was Mayor Steve Christie, and he won narrowly, but Christie won. So then Creasy was out. You lose as mayor, you're not on council.
Yeah.
He wasn't council. So then he was out 4 years and they came back and ran, and then Christie had to step down. Mr. Steve Christie, he's no longer. So then Bowden put his name in. And so then that was fairly close to him.
It was very
Yeah, what is, like, with the counties or cities, like, what's the margin of, is it just requested by any candidate? They have to request it, or is it just?
Sorry, what was the
The
question?
recount.
At what point is it like automatically recounted, or is it just strictly based on candidates requested?
It's usually based on a request.
Have you ever had a tie?
Yes, I've seen ties.
There was a tie in Anoka, but correct me if I'm wrong, not the last election, the one before, Mayor Bonnet put in by 1 vote. 1 vote. If I'm not mistaken.
But typically, I've never seen results turned around through a recount.
Right. Especially
I've never seen one change with a recount.
Well, particularly because they're counted here electronically.
Yes, in the last few elections I haven't.
But even prior to electronic, and I'm a firm believer that fairly early when the poll results start to come in, you can tell who's going to win. Because you'll see your trends set up fairly quickly.
The numbers in the last election, there's close to 15. There is, let's say 15,000. And I think the highest, correct me if I'm wrong, the highest number for a councillor has been in the high 3,000, the lowest number like 900 or things like that. And mayor, I forget what the mayor was, but like you're not going to get 15,000 votes. You know,
Yeah.
population 13,000, you're not going to get 13,000 votes. You're going to split. Like somebody's going to get 3 and somebody's going to get 2. That's 5,000. Is that fair to say that about a third of the electorate in Lacombe, I don't know what other places, actually come and participate, or is it more than
It's
that?
high.
30 to 50% typically.
Yeah.
That's what turns out to vote.
And that's high.
I thought 30% would be high, but maybe I'm thinking more provincial.
Yeah.
So
50%,
which,
50%
do
is
you know,
high.
Diane, what your typical turnout is?
I do want to say around that 30% mark is about where we are.
It's
usually.
typically 30 to 50% of your electorate will turn out to vote. That's the key to getting elected. The people that say you're going to support you, make sure they get out to vote.
And then I guess this is probably also public too. How does wages work for council and mayor? Like mayor is a full-time position.
No,
Or it's not.
no.
It's not, for our mayor right now, it is not considered a full-time position. In terms of wages, it is public knowledge for that. I believe the mayor is around that $60,000 to $70,000 range. And councillors, I believe, are around $25,000 to $30,000. Yeah.
Is it on your website?
It'll be in our financial reports.
Or yes, the financial statements. Yeah, you can find the financial statements there. You'll see what they got for 2020.
So if you're looking in our financial statements to see the exact amounts, it's in the notes of the audited statement is what you can look at.
The last election, the one before, I think I recall the number of 55,000 for the mayor, I say it might be more now. And councillors were at about 25 or 27.
That sounds.
It's probably gone up maybe 5% or something, say, just a guess. So it might be hitting 60,000 or it might be hitting 30,000, roughly, very roughly. That sound right?
Yeah.
So, but it would be different in a different community though.
Oh, yeah, larger
Oh, yeah.
communities, some, the mayor's full-time.
And the pay structure is different for many communities. Some you're paid for each meeting you attend, others, this is what your stipend is, there's no more, it's not fixed amount.
So do you find that councillors have other obligations, or they're in a place where they are able to be available for council? Like I don't wanna, like if they don't have another part-time job, or they're a stay-at-home parent, or maybe they've just been freed out of that duty, is that what you're finding councillors are, or do you find they have other obligations as well?
There's a reason that council meetings are at 5 PM and not 1 PM. And it's because most councillors have full-time jobs still.
Okay.
Yeah.
I dare say that it's only in the last 6 or 8 years, they used to be at 6:30 or 7 at night, and it got moved back to 5. It's actually a little bit earlier. It used to be always 7 o'clock at night on Monday night, if I'm right, wasn't it?
You're absolutely right.
400-page agendas push. Right?
And rural municipalities typically have their meetings during the day. Okay,
Thank you for what you do to people.
thank you for showing up, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you want to watch it again,
Yeah.